Hello, everybody. I am your androgynous android game show host from the future, Nathan Blades. This is the Neon Caster Twitch channel, and this is the final session for Phantom Arts Fest. Thanks to all of you. Thank you all so much for tuning in across this weekend. Thanks to everybody who's been running games, who's been playing in games. This has been the most complicated stream production I have ever done, and it has gone, thanks to all of you, fucking amazingly. So I am so happy. I'm so happy to bring you a fresh new tabletop RPG designed by another actual play veteran, RedmageRay. Welcome to the show for the second time, Ray.
Happy to be here, as always. Super thrilled. And just a quick congrats to everyone who's already gone. Y'all look great. It's been a wonderful.
It's been real good. When you mentioned that you've been tuning in across all the sessions so far, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. There's been really wide range of different energies and styles of storytelling across the different sessions. And this one is different still, actually, which is also really exciting that we get to end our series on a very different vibe. Dare I say, I mean, I would say cozy, but I'm a fan of sad boy shit, so I'm ready for a cozy sad time. We'll see whether it ends up quite as sad today. But before we get into what the system is and what it's about, we'll introduce our other players. Joining us on the Neon Caster channel for the first time. Everybody, welcome to the table. Ren, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about yourself and where we can find you.
Oh, well, as has been mentioned, my name is Ren. You can find me everywhere on the internet at Thorny Dryad. It's like a prickly bush. You can check out my projects on Twitter to see what I'm up to. And you can also find me doing some variety streams over on my own Twitch channel as well. But I am a veteran tabletop role-playing game player, and I love collaborative storytelling. I love
yes.
I love the dystopian genre, and I love swords and sorcery and all sorts of stuff, and I'm just tickled as punch to be here helping out.
And it is absolutely a pleasure to have you. And last but by no means least, appearing as part of Phantom Arts Fest for the last time, but hopefully not appearing for the last time on our channel in general. Welcome back for the Victory Lap, Juicy.
Hi, yes, I'm Juicy Garland. I'm a Boston area drag queen and super nerd. I'm super excited to have been participating in this event this weekend, and I'm glad to help wrap it up. You can find me on Twitter at Juicy Garland and on Instagram at juicy.garland.
And with that, let's go on so everybody can see our beautiful faces. Play nice with me. OBS. Yes, there we go. We're all there now. Hi, hello. And Ray, why don't you go and tell us what this game is while I give us some opening vibe?
Sure thing. So this is synthesis. We got the keyword of fusion, and that really just kind of set my brain off with a whole bunch of different ideas. And I landed on, well, fusion, synthesis. They're very closely linked. And so that thought track kind of trailed, and I was thinking about, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, so I was thinking about, AI and the development of cybernetics and that kind of thing, very Deus Ex / System Shock kind of vibes. And then I was like, it's interesting that there's not a lot of hopeful games of that type, and there's not a lot of games that explore the idea of an omnipresent AI that exists in multiple individuals. Like you have, like your Cortanas and AI like that stick with one person. You follow that AI with this one individual as it learns and grows. And I was like, okay, but what if a whole bunch of people ended up contacting the same AI? What would happen? What would change? And that's kind of how Synthesis came around. And yeah, this is basically going to be a proof of concept playtest with all of these wonderful people here, just kind of testing out how everything kind of feels, how the flow feels, whether the idea is just kind of goofy and we'll have a bit of fun with it and then put it to rest, or whether it can be something a little bit more than the sum of its parts, so to speak. Yeah, so stepping into Synthesis itself, the way that I've envisioned it is a kind of a 3-stage game. So the first section is more of a collaborative, like, world building section, just to kind of begin to get everyone's gears turning about the world and the situation and things like that. Then a small kind of playtest of the actual resolution mechanics in practice, and then a little bit of a kind of a review of where you think your characters will be going next, and the AI itself at the very end. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go down my little list of notes and documents here and get the ball rolling, if that's cool with everyone.
Sounds good to me.
Fantastic. So, Synthesis is an abstract game, but there are a few definitives to give it its own experience. It's designed to be able to be used as a tool in other sci-fi games, or to be played by itself. And to be played by itself, there's a few key story beats that we need to go ahead and set up. So that's why we're going to go ahead and do a bit of collaborative world building here. So the idea of both disaster and hope is very much what drove Synthesis. And one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite games of all time, Fallout New Vegas, right at the very end, there's a quote that stuck with me, which is, "Who are you that do not know their history?" And I wanted to get across this idea of learning from one's mistakes and not repeating them. So, the world is over. It has been destroyed through one method or another, but it didn't die. It has been brought back from the brink, and now humanity are attempting to rebuild what they once had. That's a little vague, so we're going to have to go ahead and jump into some details here. So, a few beats. First of all, in this world that we find ourselves playing in today, how do you think the world ended? What kind of disaster plagued this world that you would like to go ahead and explore? Was it just, total war? Was it famine? Was it climate change? Was it something big and external, meteor strike, alien invasion, whatever? You can ground it as much or as little in sci-fi as you would like. But yeah, what kind of world would you like to play in?
I was having a think about this in terms of an interesting but still plausible way that the world could end. And what made me start thinking was about how we handle and process waste and how we struggle to sometimes recycle that very well. And it's like, what if scientists decided to make a bacteria that could eat and break down plastic as a way to be able to go through landfills? And that would be really useful. But what if they didn't do it right and it just kept spreading and eating plastic? And in a world where almost everything we own is made from It doesn't have to be all, but specific types of. Lots of electronics would just fail. A lot of clothing would just be destroyed. A lot of buildings don't work properly anymore.
The entire medical industry collapses.
I like that. Kind of like a very Wall-E vibe. The Disney movie Wall-E, but with more of a bacterial twist to it. I like that.
There was a positive intent behind trying to fix it, but either through laziness or negligence or most likely capitalism, it just didn't work very well and kind of ended up being just dangerous. Huh.
What do you mean? Capitalism is a perfect system with no flaws whatsoever.
This is a fantasy world that we're telling, remember?
Awesome. Cool. I like that. What's everyone else's thoughts? Any ideas? Anything that you wanted to add to that? I'm very much I very much like to encourage the yes and approach of stacking things up and creating.
To that.
Yeah, like my mind is sort of digging deeper into this idea and the things that get disrupted, right? Like my mind went to the medical industry because everything is packaged in plastic to keep it clean. So there are no longer clean things you can transport, right? So everything breaks down in terms of trying to keep people healthy and happy, in addition to all of the other stuff that just makes everything easier to use. Like imagine a car where the walls have to disappear and you're left with all of the mechanics and the outside and the pieces that keep it all together kind of crumble and that all falls apart, right? Our whole world is ultimately kept together and kept comfortable by the plastics. All of our food is packaged in it.
All right. I like this. Any thoughts, friend?
I'm thinking that this bacteria would have been coded to look for some sort of signature that would signal, hey, this is plastic, let's eat it. So is it possible that since we're assuming the scientists messed up in some way, is it that it doesn't just stop eating plastic? Does it consume other items? Does it consume anything that has a trace of plastic on it even? So like Juicy said, we ship our food in plastic. Would the bacteria stop at just the plastic, or would it consume the things that were contained within the plastics? Would it just not discriminate? And that's the thought.
I could definitely see like strains of it, like the proper like horror movie kind of scenario where they managed to trap some of the bacteria in like a glass jar so they could study it. And this bacteria is smart, so it's like, oh, I can't eat plastic anymore, but I do have some glass here that I can eat instead. Let's modify ourselves. And everybody went, oh no.
Also, this idea of to kind of bring the thought full circle. There's microplastics in the water. There's microplastics in a lot of people. And something that's going to, as Ren said, something that's not going to stop at just the plastic itself and is going to continue. That's going to be rather disastrous. Okay, I like that. I like all of those ideas. So this kind of bioengineered bacteria that was supposed to fix the pollution issue and is now instead both adapted to devour anything with a trace of plastic and also mutated to be able to devour other materials and basically self-replicated and just tore the world asunder. Food companies and infrastructure collapsed, transport collapsed, medical, the medical industry collapsed, and everything went to chaos and ruin. Okay, That sounds good. I like that. I like that a lot. Love these different ideas here. So, with that being said, we've already talked about like bioengineering a bacteria, which is technology that in the real world we are beginning to be able to do easily with, you know, CRISPR research and things like that. So just to kind of get a vibe of how sci-fi we're going, the second point here is how advanced was the world before it ended? Is it our technology level? Is it a little bit ahead, or are we talking 100, 200, 300, 1,000 years in the future? How sci-fi do you want this world, this setting to have been before it was torn apart?
I think that given our current state of technology, we're on the brink of disaster. And we're right on the cliff's edge of something like this happening at all times. So I think a near future is probably where this kind of collapse begins. And maybe it takes a little while, and then there's an inflection point, and it just skyrockets, and everything collapses, like, say, 75 or 100 years from now.
No, I like that. There is because it also suggests that there was, at some point between now and this event happening, a bit of a sea change in terms of how people want to handle things. Because we were talking earlier about, like, Wally, where they just went off-world. They were like, can't fix this planet, we'll just go somewhere else. And it seems in this one, they were like, no, we can fix it, just not very good at it.
Yeah. And with the amount of time we're talking, I mean, if we compare it to our current situation on our real planet, plastics are a large problem in our ecosystems, like the giant floating plastic island, that kind of thing. If we consider the amount of time that would exist to allow further pollution and exacerbate those problems, it would certainly make sense that technology levels would be, you know, we would focus in on fixable problems, like, hey, how about all that plastic we put in the environment?
All right, I like that. Okay, so keeping on theme with how technology seems to be progressing in the real world, things like electric cars would become commonplace, a lot of big infrastructure via tunnels and train lines, as well as, you know, more leanings towards magnet-based, like, public transport and things like that as well. So this very kind of we are getting there approach, and just as we were about to get close to utopia, everything fell apart. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from y'all putting down. Yeah.
It's like right on the knife's edge.
Right there, and then we screwed it. All right, awesome. Point 3 then. How did humanity survive? How, considering everything that we've just talked about, was it, you know, a planned endeavor? Was it, you know, like Fallout style? Did we set up like big underground vaults made of metal and that kind of thing and hide underneath? Did we perhaps flee to the stars and just wait for the bacteria to die out? Was it just a fluke? Was it just a random mutation in this bacteria that suddenly it couldn't devour what it needed to anymore? Yeah, how do you think people survived? And this doesn't have to be a single definitive either. Like, there can be multiple methods of this, or y'all can do the same as you have already and just kind of build off of each other. But I'd love to hear thoughts.
I think have any of you played either like the board game Pandemic or like those old video games where you are a virus trying to spread across the world and some parts are harder to get to than
And
others?
you never get Madagascar and you never get Greenland. One of them closes.
I think, and especially reflecting actually, not to go too hard into other present stressful bits and pieces with illness and similar, but islands are pretty good at being able to stop diseases or things being transported in without careful control. And hey, if a plane has been stricken with a plastic-eating bacteria, it's probably not going to get off the ground too easily. So there are certain parts of the world that manage to actually not get hit by the bacteria, or at least in small enough instances where they were able to contain it in something else. And it meant that the world wasn't saved because, individual islands don't have enough resources to keep an entire planet sustained. But there were pockets of people who managed to have something barely resembling normalcy for a while.
And I think in wider regions like in the US or maybe like Eurasia, right? There are pockets where they've managed to create bubbles to sort of fend off the encroachment of this plastic eating microbe menace. But everything is always in tension because it's about trying to provide more resources for a population that is stuck in a small geographical space, while at the same time sort of people wanting to be able to escape. I like the idea that there are pathways for people to leave and sort of yeet themselves out into space, but only the people with the appropriate amount of resources are capable of accessing this.
Then there's always the consideration that this bacteria is a living thing. So how does it survive in high heat, in low heat? Are there certain environmental factors that limit it? So perhaps there are spaces that have different soil composition that prevent the bacteria from taking hold, and that these naturally occurring pockets are where people started to gravitate towards building new homes or new society, was because it was just protected against the menace that they created. Not to mention seasonal fluctuations of temperatures. So some places would see an increase in activity during the warmer months, but then they'd be able to like rebuild or patch things up in the wintertime, that kind of thing.
I like the idea that, during summer or during winter, there is less presence of the bacteria. People getting what little plastic trinkets they still have left out to be able to look at them at this time of year because it's less likely it will be destroyed. Is that summer or is it winter?
I love that.
It's funny if it's winter because then it's like Christmas for being able to look at your plastic bits and pieces.
It's like iPhone-Oween.
It would also mean talking about like islands. This planet doesn't necessarily have to be Earth, but it does mean that usually the poles of a planet are disconnected from the mainlands, and that kind of mixture of cold means that you're essentially playing Frostpunk, if you've ever played that. Like, just creating these civilizations in areas where the cold is a constant rather than... And as winter begins to stretch into other pieces of landmass, that's when humanity kind of begins to push back the virus. I like that. I like that a lot. That's a very cool vibe. So we've got a very wintry kind of a couple of large civilizations, and then small pockets, as was mentioned, these small communities that have managed to keep themselves isolated. Perhaps a few kind of smaller self-sufficient space stations, but nothing like super duper sci-fi. I like that a lot. Okay, yeah, awesome. Just a quick clarifying question as well for everyone. Is this going to be a kind of typical sci-fi, if bacteria is in a big enough cluster, it's visible to the human eye? Or is this a purely invisible menace that you can't see until it begins devouring something? And because that would change technology, that would change, you'd need detectors, you'd need purifiers and decontaminants and things like that. So
I might be biased. I used to work with radiation.
Oh.
And the idea to me of the invisible thing that you can't smell or see or taste, you can only see the effects of. So in this case, we'd see things crumbling to dust in front of us, and that's how we know that it's here. That's something that's really compelling to me.
That's some It Follows shit. Like, you only know it's there once it's chasing you. Good God.
I think that makes it infinitely more terrifying as a concept.
Because you never know where it is until it's there.
Let me add that to How Did the World End then?
Can't fight what you can't see. All right. Awesome. So the other key kind of touch point for synthesis is, at some point, humanity creates the Genesis Project. And the Genesis Project is intentionally, kind of vague. It's just kind of a name and a vibe that is attached, but it is some kind of project that is built to, one, tackle the calamity that is that has already now ended, and as people are trying to rebuild, trying to make sure that they can rebuild safely and securely, but also, two, trying to improve on humanity and trying to ensure that if there was to be a second calamity, that we would be utmost prepared. And through this, the Genesis Project creates an AI that can be spread out throughout members of the population. Now, the one that you'll be running into in the future is going to be a prototype, but for now, is that all the Genesis Project wants? Is this going to be something a little more sinister, or would you want a project like this to show the best and brightest of humanity and leave it there? Considering the world is now destroyed, we don't have to worry about, capitalism or anything like that. It's literally just, do you want this to be a fully benevolent organization, or do you want there to be an ulterior motive, I guess you could say? This project is usually kind of, the Genesis Project is usually described by whoever would be facilitating the game, so as I just did, but it's always worth listening to your players and getting their feedback as well to kind of shape and mold the rest of the experience and the AI as well, which we'll be going into in a little bit. But so what kind of vibe do you want this project to have? Fully benevolent? A little twisted? Very twisted.
I won't set that, but I'll talk, because AI is one of my favorite subjects. I don't have the education to know about making it, but where the role it has in fiction and things like that is something I'm fascinated by. I even have the t-shirt I'm wearing, this non-binary humanoid on it. You know, we stand the energy. But a thing that I've been really thinking a lot about recently is the process of like big data and how big data is used to interpret results, because there's so many like AI image generators that people are obsessed with at the moment. And back in the day, those existed for a while, but they did stuff like they found it really hard to generate black people because their data sets were so small and had that information missing. And that's always made me really interesting about the garbage data in, garbage data out kind of thing, and what steps people might take to avoid that circumstance, or even if they're thinking about that at all. And I'd like to throw that notion in the air in terms of how the Genesis project might be or might not be.
I also feel like we have a theme already of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that maybe the motivations of the Genesis project are noble and positive, but perhaps either their methods or their outcomes are not always ideal.
Well, I'm definitely putting in the road to hell is paved with good intentions in the doc. That's great.
Perhaps the AI was initially created for everyone, but it might have been modified with a subcode that it was really looking to make the planet habitable for those elite folks that yeeted themselves off into space.
Not like an openly hostile superiority complex, but like that kind of vibe of like, yeah, well, I'm here to serve these individuals. That's they made me, so that's what I'm doing. I like that a lot, Ren.
I like the idea that the stakeholders of this kind of thing are just in space and not having to contend with the thing that they are trying to solve, so they're not thinking about the practical effects of that. Yeah.
We're up here just chilling. We'll come down eventually once everything's fixed. Don't worry
While having
about
Mai
it.
Tais with their space bubbles.
We're all playing Space Jenga. It's a very difficult version of Jenga. Awesome. Okay, cool. So, yeah, it's a really cool like vibe going on here, just with all of this information. It's a kind of capstone. Before we go through just a quick summary of kind of what's been said here, thank you, oh merciful note taker. This is actually a concept that came up in a chat with Nathan, funnily enough, about your game Ballad of Conjurers, and how back when I was doing my my drama studies, my GCSEs, and then working with theatre productions a little bit, came across this term, tonal anchor. So a tonal anchor is a word that just encapsulates the tone that someone, in this case the player, would like the game to take place in. And regardless of what happens, that anchor is there to fall back on if you ever need inspiration or to connect the dots or anything like that. It just helps kind of push the thought process in the directions that the players and the facilitator in this case would want to do. So I would like to go through and just obviously take a moment to think about it, but go ahead and just grab a word that kind of goes through the kind of vibe that this world gives you and what your adventure would want to go on. So some of the examples I put in here was like serious, gritty, abstract, whimsical, hopeful, magical, if that's your thing, and cozy, funnily enough. I literally put in the notes, cozy, hey, the game's in your hands, make it exactly how you want it to be. Yeah.
Could we use a phrase as
If that
opposed
would-
to just a single word?
I mean, if that would work better, yeah.
Just the thing that occurs to me is sort of your mention earlier that this is still a hopeful world. Like, despite what we're facing, there is still hope, and I think the phrase "we will prevail" might be good.
Yeah, that kind of determined, like almost like spiteful determination of like, no, we will do this. Like,
Yes.
Okay.
I think I do want to invoke cozy as part of this. You know, if we're having our survival kids lost in blue, kind of like we're on an island doing our research to try and fix some shit. There's got to be the times where we're not desperately doing research to unfuck things, right? Is it cozy with a Z or an S? I always get told that it's the other one. Okay.
It is a Z, I believe.
Well, it's telling me it's an S, but I'm sticking with the Z. Let's go. Shut up.
And for those who speak American, a Z.
We're not going to talk about it. Ren, your tonal anchor.
I've got just words coming to my head, and I'm kind of thinking. I don't think it's necessarily doesn't have the same vibe as, like you said, hopeful or cozy or anything, but I want to say mechanical.
Okay. Okay. I like that. Do you mean that in the more kind of like metaphorical respect, or like a more literal respect? Are you seeing very kind of like, are you seeing this world coming back? Are you seeing it very industrial? Like a lot of machines and, using old resources, as it were, to keep things? Or are you talking more just things in this world are done in a very rigid and defined order? Just to clarify.
Well, I was originally thinking the literal sense, but I don't see why it can't be both.
Why not? Yeah, absolutely. That's the joy of having only one or a few words as a tonal anchor. It can be interpreted kind of however you wish it to be.
Love words like that.
Yeah, you can really push that and manipulate it and make it your own. But yeah, awesome, cool. So we have we will prevail, this kind of determination, cozy and mechanical. Cool. So just to kind of review here, we have a world that was so reliant on plastics and the like that when the world became overly polluted, scientists decided to bioengineer a bacteria that would devour the plastics. And it went very quickly out of control. The bacteria began to eat a lot more than it was meant to. It changed and adapted, and as it grew and multiplied, it became a lot more highly evolved. It began attacking the things in the plastics. It began devouring things that even had contact with plastics. It began to branch out of plastics entirely and began to attack other kinds of plastic, maybe even some kinds of metals, and just began to tear across the planet. But humanity held out in bastions of cold and ice. These either small pockets of civilizations that managed to hold out one way or another, or at the poles of the planets, these sectioned off areas where winter and the cold and snow is a normality, and slowed down the bacteria to a crawl more than slow enough for humanity to launch or begin to launch this counterattack of sorts. And that very much kind of like Frostpunk / like Phoenix Point vibe. That kind of sounds like where we're going here. And the Genesis Project was created to make the world more hospitable, to perhaps combat the bacteria in its own way, maybe. But one way or another, the Genesis Project created AI to assist in this endeavor, but it was created by stakeholders that are now no longer on the planet. You can only do so much, leaving a computer system to its own whims and desires. So that kind of feels like that kind of feels like where we're at. As long as everyone is kind of happy with that, or if I missed anything, or if you have anything to add to that, please let me know. Otherwise, looks like we're pretty secure.
Summary to me.
Fantastic. Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into just a quick thought about characters. So the big thing about Synthesis is that it has no stats. None at all. No HP, no strength, no wits. It is entirely narratively focused and entirely just theater, the theater-esque. You're just focusing on telling the story, and it's a little abstract, but it opens up a lot more pathways that stats sometimes impose restrictions on. So there are only two definitives while playing Synthesis. One, you exist in a world that was dead and is now beginning to bounce back and resuscitate. And two, at some point, your character entered the Genesis Project and has been fused with an AI. Those are the only two definitives. Anything else is entirely up to you and what kind of character you would want to play. So there's two kind of pointers that I would want to bring up to perhaps guide you, because that's a very wide and abstract and broad concept. So first of all, you are living in a husk of a world. What do you want to explore with that? How did this world shape your character? What do you want to explore? What do you think they would do realistically? Build this idea of what story you would like to tell, and then conceptualize that character in the world that you've all just created together. Then, what drove you towards the Genesis Project? What happened with this initial character idea that suddenly made you go, I can do more? Did you know what the Genesis Project was? Did you agree to it, or were you perhaps coerced? what drove you to it? Is there a personal stake, or are you just kind of trying to be a philanthropist? And those are the two kind of big pointers that I would throw your way to kind of help create someone in this world. So yeah.
Okay. I like that we've got this kind of dichotomy going between the people who've survived in the extreme cold and the islands, which, even if it's not necessarily Earth, has a similar structure of that are nearer the equator, which are both isolated and hot, and neither of those environments were great for the bacteria. I would like for my character to be from that kind of Caribbean style space, but the research facility for Genesis is in one of those frost wastes, and they've had to make that move in their life, because I think, they're of a now X generation where they haven't left the island for really obvious reasons, and now have to for whatever reason, and they're adjusting to having to live in an entirely culture separate to their own and finding new community over again, which is weird and difficult and stressful, but not impossible.
I think that my character is deeply driven to find the solution to the problem, right? And maybe that means that there's a personal tragedy that they latch onto. And that's what drives them to try to problem solve their way out of this hellscape. Oh, would you folks mind adding their character to the section? Because I think you'll probably be able to explain it better than what I have in my head.
And for me, I am thinking someone who sees the potential in the world around them, but wants to unlock that potential. They've lived in one of those cold bastions for so long, they've seen people scrape by and make do with what they have, and those experiences, while indicative of the world around them and what the values of their community are, it helped shape this ambition, this drive that they had, that they wanted to do more to fix it. And I think that also is partly what pushed them towards the Genesis project as well.
Okay. Also, my mic glitched out a little bit, so can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, so the other part that I kind of missed is the other thing that I would suggest is kind of creating a small set of anchors for yourself. So this character, you can pick 3 kind of key traits. They're by no means like all-encompassing. They're not like, there are certain PBTA games where like those 3 traits define your entire character. It's not that, but it is 3 traits that help ground your character. Something to kind of a foundation, essentially, something to scaffold this idea of a character from. This, of course, if we were to play a long form game, multiple sessions, this would end up kind of creating this web. But for now, for a short, like one shot, half one shot, so thinking about 3 key traits that would define this character, and that can be something like kind or selfish or intelligent, or it could be something a little more focused around how they interact with the world. So are they creative? Are they easily adaptable? Are they self-sufficient? Those kinds of things. So yeah, go ahead and if you want to go ahead and assign yourself a few kind of words, if that would help with the character creation process, then go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like the personal tragedy was like this person was witness to the loss of their parents from the microbes just as they were reaching that sort of Elysium of the like polar hideaway, right? And I think that's driven them to become single-minded with focus at trying to fix this. And that makes them incredibly dedicated. But it also has made them distant or cold with other people, afraid of that kind of loss again, given the tenuous nature of the world around them.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to the scenes where I get to see if we can help open you up to it. Ooh, that's gonna be good. I like that. I went super abstract with my 3 kind of like words of alchemist, enshrouded, and careful. I think alchemist in a very literal sense, they're a good cook and like cooking. I think food is we're in he previously lived in a part of the world where growing food was actually really easy, and is finding that lack of food culture difficult on the other side. But also the idea of taking disparate things and making something new and different is something that he's fascinated by. Enshrouded, I think, both in terms of how he likes to dress. That was much looser, flowing-y, breathable layers in warmer climes, but is now multiple kind of like ponchos and layers now that we're in this colder space, rather than a more like sci-fi style like astronaut suit, and I think careful in that this is unfamiliar territory, doesn't want to fuck it up and break whatever tenuous connections he might have already established. He's very scared about ruining it.
Nice. It's interesting that you talk about the poncho thing. I have an idea that I want to throw down, but I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on characters first.
For myself, I put down a few thoughts. I put thoughtful. This character I see as someone who does a good deal of evaluation and thinking about the things that they see. So they're not someone who's closed-minded, so they will be open to different ways of thinking about things. They're ambitious. They have seen how their community struggled with the day-to-day, and they want to improve that. So it's a big ask, and it requires big brain thoughts. So they need to be ambitious to make it happen. And I also put self-defeatist in that what's someone without a little internal conflict, someone who's a little unsure of themselves, not 100% sold on the fact that they are actually capable of making change happen, but they are still going to try, despite that little voice in the back of their head telling them that maybe they're just not up to the task.
Do it. I believe in you. it's interesting that there's a combination of both ambitious and self-defeatist. And good God, if imposter syndrome isn't the curse of every creator that exists.
Yes.
100%.
Oh, yes. I can do this. I know I can, and I want to do it. But also...
Correct.
Fantastic. I like that a lot. Okay, so Alchemist, Enshrouded, Careful. Self-defeatist, Thoughtful, Ambitious. And then...
Single-minded, dedicated,
Ooh.
distant.
I like that a lot. So a thought came to mind with this mix of... You mentioned, like, Poncho, and my brain kind of went somewhere. Considering we want to go for cozy, but also mechanical, a thought came to mind. If a bacteria is going to destroy most of the infrastructure of the world, there would have to be improvisations and adaptations to use the materials that the bacteria did not destroy. So I had this idea of cultures and settlements focusing around fabric rather than metals and plastics, and also this idea of many of these mechanical assistants, whether that be ramshackle big production, like drilling sections of ice to get good drinking water, blah blah blah, or whether that be kind of like almost automatons, having them partially mechanical but also like almost puppeteered, having a lot of their engineering be with thread and with fabric as well as more traditional materials. I think that would be a really interesting setting to kind of work with there, having this world that is governed more by leathers and threads and spools and things. It's almost like it's almost like thread-based steampunk.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because I was actually having the same thought. So early on, I was thinking like, almost all of our clothing right now is made of plastic. It's all some form of poly, unless you are consciously going out of your way to get like cotton or linen or something else, right? So people have to respond to the collapse of everything, not only with sort of isolation, but also materially and aesthetically, things have to change. And that means that everything around us is going to have to be either natural material, or it's going to have to be glass or ceramic or metal. So I was also veering in my head towards this idea of like steam power becoming more popular, because it can't be eaten, because there are no plastic components. It's hard metals with thick wall using steam to move it. And yeah, no, I'm right there with you on that.
I really like the idea that the journey that my character kind of took to get overseas to the first is like a proper like steamship kind of deal. The idea of having to go travel from a native land to a place full of white people by boat is not lost on him, but it's for the greater good.
Oh, Jesus.
If I may go there with that one joke, I won't lean on that too hard. But
spicy. All right, I like it. No, that's good.
The cultural memory lingers.
Yeah, but I just thought I'd go ahead and kind of throw that out because it was whirring in the brain there, and this idea.
I'm glad you
of,
did.
No, like Weaver Punk is a very cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, like these like almost like I've got it in my head of like these little automatons that run like partially on steam, but you can also see like spinning wheels and like these sections of thread and things that are keeping it together. And like, as I said, like drilling a hole to get ice. It's not actually like this mechanical thing. It's just pieces of thread that are just pulling the drill around and things like that.
And you know, if we are on the poles, there's no way to grow things. So there must be massive factories of silkworms drawing thread to fuel the pipeline.
Yeah, silkworms and, you know, spiders and that kind of thing. Like,
there are definitely
tree
some
fiber
people out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Tree fibers and hemp and
yeah.
things like that as well. Yeah, you're right there, Ren.
There are definitely some people out there that decided to lean into the aesthetic of plate, and they are actually in like ceramics and like modern era, like a futuristic version of suits of armor. You know, maybe that makes them feel a bit more comfortable, a little less vulnerable in the world.
Just people running around with like porcelain spears and stuff. Like, amazing.
With those ultra sharp edges.
It's just a bowl cracked in half and sharp. I kind of love it though.
I think it's in like Disco Elysium where we run into a character who's entirely in ceramic plate mail.
Yes.
And I was like, how? I guess that's possible, huh? So like, yeah.
Better that the ceramic cracks rather than your bones, I guess. All right, cool. So last little kind of like character creation step here. It's definitely not required, but it is 100% recommended. Synthesis as a kind of like a long form storytelling thing, synthesis works best when the characters have close connections. As such, think about what could possibly connect your characters between each other. Are you, you know, family? Are you friends? Are you loved ones? Are you enemies? Are you rivals? Are you, you know, any of those kind of super close connections? How do you know each other? How do you exist in the same space? Do you help each other? Do you perhaps too many cooks in the kitchen? Maybe you get in each other's way a lot. And yeah, I kind of recommend that each character has at least one close connection with each character, because that just helps kind of thread the idea of synthesis together, as well as makes life easier for the AI, which we'll go into in a little bit.
I'm gonna have to come up with a name first, because I think that will probably off a whole bunch of
and a name, yes.
Okay.
I feel like, given at least sort of my character's focus, perhaps we work together to try to fix the world. I don't know how we're doing it or what we're doing. But maybe we're like a group of researchers or engineers trying to make the place better.
Yeah, it feels like we've all come from separate parts of the world that have managed to stave off the bacteria in one way or another, and we're now in a bit of a symposium in this one location, kind of comparing notes and seeing if there is any kind of useful common thread that we can work together to produce. Desperately looking around inspiration for this name. Good God, I love doing a meaningful name. You know, thinking of a. I'm gonna go look up some alchemy terms and see if something comes up around that, since it's one of the threads that I set for my character.
That's super interesting that you went with that as well, because the idea of synthesis and the alchemy term amalgam run through most of my work. Whether that be you know, my homebrew setting is very much focused around synthesis and amalgam and things like that, so it's just it's funny to be like, oh yeah, that fits.
Oh, like the different aquavitae being like alcohol. Cool. Aquafortis, literally strong water. Fortis, excellent. Got it.
Yes. I also just think the term strong water is funny. Kind of want to make a water-based character in an RPG that's just called Strong Water. Sorry, go on.
No, I'm imagining an older character, a little professorial maybe. So I'm gonna call him Harold McKinnon, PhD.
Dr. McKinnon. Yeah, we'll do. A family name is important to know.
Unless it's not.
Yeah, it might not be. There's a degree to which the number of families that exist is definitely reduced by a decent amount.
I was gonna say, there could also be, a lot of communities in the real world, smaller communities, they all share names, like family names between each other. So maybe after the world's ended, people want a sense of union and community and togetherness when something shattered them apart. So, maybe everyone in a settlement shares a name, even if they're not blood related, or, possibilities are endless.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of real world surnames that are essentially, we're all from a particular location, and some sci-fi fantasy stuff expands that to it being like a full term or title. And I do like being Fortis of the Shore.
I like it.
Yeah, my initial thought was surname that describes like where you're from. So if you're of a specific community, you are so and so of the community name. So I'm thinking my character will be younger, not like young adult, but not like adult, so probably somewhere closing in on 30. And they are named Waverly of to be determined.
Oh, well, is Harold McKinnon in one of the kind of like tundra places, or are they in one of the, because we kind of established 3 locations where settlements kind of, well, 4 including space.
So I was imagining Harold's being a child and with like droves of folks trying to escape the collapse of everything, entering into this Arctic space, whether it's North or South Pole, right? So I think that he is ultimately from somewhere that no longer matters because it no longer exists. So if he's going to identify with any location, it's going to be this ice city.
Oh, so both of you might be from there then, because if it's a Waverly Snows Reach as a surname, you might have already kind of settled in the same kind of tundra sprawl. And I'm kind of the newcomer of the 3, but we've all been working together for X period of time.
And I feel like there's a generational gap because I may have been one of the early folks who ended up here, so I don't have like the new name style. I'm imagining like this character is probably like in his 70s or like mid 70s is where I'm thinking. Mostly he's made of tweed.
I love that though. Leather elbow like patches, very much as a treat. Yeah. Cool, I dig that. Yeah. I guess that probably makes me the youngest then. If I am that would then, with this kind of time period suggestion, if you're still alive, that would mean I could feasibly be 2nd generation. So I grew up in a world where this has already been a thing, and I am probably in my mid-20s. Is Waverly like 2nd generation, or did you also see the fall of mankind?
I would say probably 2nd generation, yeah.
All right. 2 younger folks and a veteran, as it were. I like it. I like the dynamic that's kind of mixing in here. I like this a lot. All right. Is there anything else character-wise that anyone wanted to go ahead and kind of bring up to each other, kind of just to solidify things?
Ooh, sure. A thing that I quite like doing in Chargen is like a round robin of like player X thinks player Y is with a couple of phrases, and that doesn't necessarily need to be mutual, so we might have different opinions of each other. So like Fortis thinks Harold is not like the other old school. You know, this is we've met a handful of first generation folks, but it seems like Harold's outlook on things, even if they're currently a little bit closed off, has a different energy to a lot of the other first gen, and that's why Fortis likes working with you, because you don't seem to have the same attitude as a lot of the other people in the field. They're maybe a bit more defeatist than Harold, or maybe less determined. And thinks Waverly is.
You're not like all the other boomers.
Oh, God.
Literally that. I think Waverly is too hard on themselves.
And I think, or rather, Harold thinks Fortis is bright and has potential, and that Waverly is a reliable resource.
I'm thinking that Waverly sees Harold as a little too secretive because of their cold and distant nature. And that makes working with him a little difficult. And then Waverly would look at Fortis and see someone who has they probably feel like a kindred spirit there, because you've come to a new place to learn more, and you've got that starry-eyed ambition that Waverly also has, so probably feel that there's that common goal between the two of you, that common thread.
Love it. Amazing. And this actually this helps with the situation regarding the AI as well. So having this kind of laid out is spicy. Okay. Any other thoughts, folks? Are we feeling kind of comfy at this point?
Cozy, even.
Cozy, even. All right.
If we're about to step into the world of rolling some dice about it, do you mind if we take a break a little bit early?
Yeah, I was just kind of gonna very quickly go over the AI
Sure.
and the
No,
role of
do that
how
first.
that
Do
actually
that
works.
first, do that first, please.
This is just the last piece of like setup before we jump into some actual playtesting, with a break in the middle. But the facilitator of synthesis also plays a character. They play the AI. The AI is a construct created by the Genesis project that is connected through all players. The AI is one AI that is connected to everyone. So any information that it gets from one person, it can then relay to another. However, although the players know this, the characters do not. So the characters only believe that the AI that they have been fused with is their AI. And this is where this is why there's been such a focus on traits and relationships, because information can be shared via the AI between individuals, and that can be used for good or for ill depending on the tonal anchors and the setup of the world that has been created. If you wanted something dark and gritty, well, if an AI ends up running into someone's internal monologue of secrets, perhaps, to do with another character's backstory, well, the AI knows that now. They can go ahead and just throw that out if they wanted to. Or perhaps the opposite is true, and they can give words of encouragement and positivity that a character perhaps may be too closed off to fully express. The AI is a blank slate. It only knows, from humanity at least, it only knows what it learns. The AI knows much of the world before its destruction. It knows a lot about how things used to be, which is why the world building is so important, because not only do the players know, but the AI also needs to know. And not only can the players continue to world build throughout playing, but the AI can as well. So, for example, now that we've kind of talked about this idea of, like, you know, pushing alternate materials, the AI would know that, for example, inoculations were put into place in animals before humans to weather the cold. So farming and animal husbandry for things like cows and sheep and the like in Arctic regions are easier. And that is one of the sources of a lot of this thread and fabric, for example. Things like that, like the purpose of the world building section is not only for the players, but now for the individual playing the AI to run with all of that information, those vibes, the setting, the tones, and work with your players to create a more expansive world. So yeah, I will be playing the role of the AI here. So the AI is inquisitive, is curious, and relatively easily impressioned. So my job as the AI is to learn as much as I can from the other characters, gather that information and pull it out of them, and work towards the AI's goal. Whatever that may look like according to the world building, which we have already sorted out here. And then test them based on their morals and their traits, and push the development of the story and the character as well. That's kind of the goal here, and see how the character reacts and take that information and apply it to the AI moving forward. And we see how both the characters and a neutral party develop throughout the story. And that kind of will turn into what we end up actually rolling dice about, but that can wait. That can go ahead and be explained a little bit in action rather than now. But yeah, that's kind of set the scene and wraps up the first part of synthesis here. We've got all of our world details sorted enough to create a story now, and I will be dual facilitating / playing the AI here as we jump into playing just after a quick break for everyone to jump up, rehydrate, and all that good stuff.
Fantastic. All right. We'll be back with you all for the story that we're weaving in 5 minutes. See you all soon. Hello, everybody. welcome back. We are back with the second half of our session of Synthesis, an experimental new system designed and run by our GM for this evening, Ray. Shall we, how would we like to give a summary of the world that we have just built?
Weave punk.
Yeah. There we go. We did it.
Very, very much like a weave punk. Yes, that kind of vibe.
In a world where plastic no longer exists, natural fibers are a way forward for what remains of humanity.
Yeah, pretty much. A world ravaged by a bacteria created with good intentions that was meant to counter pollution, and then decided to, well, not decided to, but ended up multiplying and adapting and evolving, spreading beyond the reaches of human control, as nature so often does and takes its own course. The plastics and some metals that make up the majority of the infrastructure across the planet are devoured, and the entire infrastructure and, well, a lot of the planet itself is wiped out. We do see, slowly though, signs of life, signs of breath, as these small communities begin to push back using the bacteria's natural weakness of the cold and its inability to adapt fast enough to become an extremophile. Humans use that weakness to push back, to create these safe and secure communities that, while there is still that underlying threat, slowly but surely humanity is gaining more territory against this menace, using materials that perhaps they had left in the dust a long time ago, using more unusual metals, using machines created out of wood and these strange metals and fibers and hemp and many different kinds of thread and fabric to create these small facilities. Now, the interesting thing is, when modern technology is no longer enough, you find the wise and timeless strategies of many individuals that have come before tends to crawl back to the forefront. So although a lot of these communities are made of very diverse individuals, they haven't quite fully homogenized. There's still a lot of cultures and history between a lot of these individuals that is now becoming a shared benefit to everyone. There's still a lot of individuality, a lot of, whether that be, you know, traditional science, or whether that be, you know, old tribal family recipes and the like. This movement into a more collaborative community focused way of life has now begun. And that, in one of these communities, is kind of where we're gonna pick up here, as we have created these 3 characters that inhabit this world. My question to you, just as we take a look and the camera kind of pans away from this historical look at the destroyed world and begins to zoom in and in and in towards one of these tundra-esque settlements. To you, I ask, what does your everyday look like? What's your usual kind of routine when you're not focused on something specific?
Oh, point of order, that, like, background spiel was absolutely done with a woven tapestry, and then as it scrolled down it got to the facility and then did a match cut of the actual physical location. Absolutely, yes. An everyday deal, I think. We get a shot of the kind of like silk making facilities, in addition to the just, you know, where all the silkworms and spiders are working. There's also this really elaborate wooden contraption that is actually doing the process of making it basic cloth. It doesn't need to be done by hand. We still retain all the mechanics knowledge, but it requires inspection to make sure that it's actually something. And part of checking it being done overnight is coming relatively early in the morning, and Fortis is there, kind of like looking through the fabric, being like, yeah, this is a solid 3 meters, no errors, excellent. Using a kind of like ceramic knife to go and slice the top edge nice and clean, and folding it neatly up. All right, we'll have to bring this back to the others.
There's definitely a few other individuals who are kind of working these smaller looms and smaller kind of like spinning wheels and things in here, but your unique knowledge of just materials and processes that you've picked up over both your education and just through the years means that a lot of these folks trust that you are able to push out the most productivity out of these mechanisms, and you are very politely and respectfully kind of left to your work for the most part, and you kind of catch in the corner of your eye some of these other industry folk that you have taught a few tricks of the trade to over the last however long you've been here. You can see out the corner of your eye a few of these tricks kind of coming into play, and it brings you a little warmth in your chest, a little happiness watching that knowledge get spread in real time.
The auto-weaver isn't perfect. I think the people who are actually putting stuff together by hand don't generate the kind of errors that this machine might, having left it off over. It's like if anybody's done 3D printing before, sometimes you go away and come back hours later and how it's interpreted the printing is just not the one. So occasionally you go back and check and it's just like, this just has hexagonal holes in it in a very pretty but entirely useless pattern. Okay, fine. And in those instances, the people who are using the spinning wheels and weaving it all by hand get to have a nice hearty chuckle at how Fortis's auto-weaver is fucked up. But this one, it's not pretty, but it works, it won't break, and there are no holes.
Sturdy enough to be used for like some kind of a wall or something, or something draped over something quite large.
Ooh, we're working on, after previous in this kind of like dorm space or workspace that we all share, there's been a bit of an argument over kind of like, well, I don't want to have to look at you while you're working. You do an annoying thing with pencils, and if I have to look at that one more time, I'm going to scream. So screen partitions are being woven so we can work in.
I like to imagine Harold like in a montage for his day-to-day where he wakes up and there's a suit laid out that he put out the night prior, and he just simply goes and cleans himself and puts it on, and like he has very Spartan surroundings. And he just sort of silently eats his breakfast and sips his black coffee and reads a paper before strolling over. And then we see him pass a door that just says Fibers Laboratory. And he opens the door with a key and walks in. And you can see like banks of some like chemistry equipment and glassware in the middle. And there are several weaving machines on the back wall. And there's an office filled with papers just in piles on a wooden desk. in the corner of the lab, and that's where he goes to start reviewing documentation.
I see, excuse me, Waverly getting up in the morning, going about their business, which would be making breakfast, because who can tackle a day without a healthy start, you know? And eventually, after they prepare themselves, they go about grabbing like paper, and they go about grabbing some charcoal, and they snag some tools and filament, and then they start boiling water. And when that water gets nice and hot, they put it in a metal thermos, to keep with them, and they kind of secure it along their waist. And once they've gathered all of these materials up, they call out, or at least they say to their, I imagine they still live at home, but they just say, I'm going out for the usual run, and they go out of the city to look for whatever they can find, whatever they think might be a useful tidbit for research purposes. Maybe scoping out derelict machinery, doing soil testing, and perhaps even on their way, if they come across anyone who's having difficulty with their tools, or they're having trouble with their tasks, offering a hand to them. One of the reasons they would bring the hot water with them is to melt ice or clear snow from places that require a little more finesse than just brushing it off. So I just imagine they do a lot of activity that most people would probably think is kind of juvenile, running out and exploring.
All right. And it's during this exploration that something catches your eye. This tundra landscape, it's I guess kind of a little kind of hilly in spots, and you've been able to navigate this pretty simply and pretty easily before. And you know that there are pockets of lakes that have been frozen over. Nowadays, perhaps, before, when in the before times, as it were, you would have assumed that these lakes would have defrosted and become the large bodies of water and then refroze as the season cycle moved. But nowadays they just seem to stay mostly frozen. And as you kind of stumble across this, you notice for the first time, and you've been to this lake many, many, many times, you see a dark silver-ish tint underneath the frozen ice of the lake. There's just enough of a clearing in the surface ice to see it. And it almost seems to reflect whatever little light is coming through. It looks odd to you, and as you kind of take a peek a little closer, there's a few kind of grooves and ridges, and you realize looking at it, like you've seen these both drawn by individuals older than you, and in a few of the surviving technological documents, it looks like a keycard reader just underneath the lake. Can't quite see anything else around it. You can just kind of make out the grooves in between.
Pretty close to the surface, huh?
A lot closer than you'd expect. But this lake has been pretty heavily frozen for the majority of the time, so it's been hard to even see through. So the fact that you've seen this at all is interesting, to say the least.
Well, I suppose I could dig it up. And I imagine that I'd have some sort of ice pick or chisel on hand and just try and dig down so that I can kind of carve it out.
Okay. You begin to chip your way through the ice here, and it's a good, 3 inches thick the way down. This is going to take you a considerable amount of time, but luckily you've had some practice. You know just the right weak spots to hit to speed up the process. Just the right places to ensure that you don't just drop into the water. As this process is happening, you feel a slight familiar buzz in your head, just kind of in the central part of your mind, as it's almost like a consciousness switching on in your mind, like someone else is budging in your space for a moment to kind of poke their head in around the corner. You just feel, are you sure this course of action is wise? I know that you want to go ahead and explore the unknown, but perhaps this could be dangerous alone?
Waverly will kind of bob their head a little bit, kind of processing what's being said. Yeah, I suppose it is dangerous, but I mean, what if I forget where it is? I gotta dig it out now. Otherwise, I could lose it. Unless you don't think I can do this.
Do you think you would be that forgetful?
Not on purpose.
Understood. You can feel almost like that buzz continue for a moment, almost as if it is kind of processing the information just like you were, and then the buzz fades and kind of slinks back out of your mind.
Shrug and keep going at my work.
All right. It takes a little while longer, and at this point, a few of the individuals from your little facility here have kind of come and gone at this point. They've kind of given you a little wave. You're clearly busy, so they've let you continue on. And as this is happening and they return back, one of them catches you, Fortis, just as you're kind of finishing up your work and moving from one area to another. And they give you a quick wave and a little chuckle, just, Waverly's found something again.
Hi. Already? I mean, it was only really last week that they managed to find something interesting. Do you know what it is?
No idea. You know me, as soon as they start swinging that... I'm not going to get involved in that. They know exactly what they're doing, but...
Oh, if they're going to be at that, they're going to be at that literally for the next couple of hours, and they're going to forget to eat, so... we'll go bring them lunch. Thanks for letting me know.
You know they've done that plenty of times. It's probably a good idea.
Oh, I should also go see if the doctor's hungry.
Also wanted to figure out what they were doing. Oh, and I pull a little satchel from the side. Just a few more. Kind of hand the satchel over to you. A few more of the smaller, finer fibers that you requested. We managed to find a few out there, but not a lot.
Oh my gosh.
I hope it helps.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I know it feels like you're working a whole lot for very little, but I promise you it's going somewhere.
It always is, Fortis. It always is. They give you just a warm smile and a kind of a quick tap on an affirming tap on the shoulder. And make their way off.
Smile is it clearly reads that he doesn't believe that is a warm smile and that they feel like they're working for no benefit. But it's good. But they're kind of like, no, thank you for your hard work. Do let us know if you need dinner again, right? I'm sure I'll be able to cook for another couple more.
Will do. Thanks again.
Have a good one. And there is a kind of like turn back to the. I think the workspace also has like a full kind of like kitchen and almost living room area. It's kind of Spartan, but there is a sofa, that to make it look remotely cozy. And Fortis kind of brings these fibers back there and starts, I think bothers the doctor.
Yeah, when you walk into the lab, I think that Harold is feeding the like experimental silkworms on a rack on one side of the laboratory. He's like giving them their like little nutrient pastes. Precisely.
Hey, Dr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Good. You're around. I wanted to check if you were hungry. Apparently, Waverly is out in the fields, and I know they have not brought lunch for themselves. So.
I'm not sure what exactly these have to do with one another, but sure, I suppose, if it's important.
Well, if I'm making lunch for one of you, I'm gonna make lunch for all of us.
Okay, then.
Right.
Lead the way.
No. Don't stop what you're doing. I'll just be with you in just a second. And there is a move to the kind of kitchen area. What is the kind of like what you feel is the standard lunch food? I guess it's probably cured meat if we've managed to kind of get goats and sheep and whatever up here.
I was thinking processed bug because they're so rich in protein and nutrients anyways, that as a way to deal with that waste stream, they probably, when they're culled from the population, get processed as like synthetic meat and snacks.
Yeah, there's definitely that. There's also probably a lot of, considering the need for fabric in like tundra areas, it's probably a lot of quite fatty game meat, like hunting down like moose and stuff, There's also probably quite a lot of perhaps not as much, but especially for things like oils, there's probably quite a bit of ice fishing around. So it's probably kind of a mixture of these three. It would probably be a more protein and fat-based diet. Things like vegetables would be relatively hard to come by, or at least like traditional vegetables. But you could probably make some kind of like more fibrous pastes, I guess, out of some of the local fauna and flora.
Okay, I got it. So we go to the fridge in our kind of workspace, and it has like perfect cubes of like processed blood. They're just called they're described as protein blocks because the first generation were not a huge fan of having to resign themselves to eating just bugs. So
they were originally called bug snacks.
We just call them blocks at this point. It's now just drifted enough where if it's the 3x3 centimeter cube, it's just blocks. but Fortis has like a jar of animal fat that they use as cooking oil, so to kind of give it the vague taste and scent of, like, I think goat. And then at the back of the cupboard, in a tiny lockbox, there is actually a key and a lock on it. Fortis pulls it out and opens, and it is the small amounts of glass jars of spices that they brought with them from what they eat, because they had those plants available, and took as much of the spices as he could sensibly carry. And we're maybe halfway through it at this point now. It's been about a year. But hey, it feels like it's a day where we could do with some cinnamon. So you get about 10-15 minutes pass, and Harold can kind of smell something. It's the smell of trees and of wild game, just kind of in the background.
What is this time?
Oh, you've had this before. You remember what the taste of cinnamon is like, right?
Yes, I do. A rare delicacy, to be certain. Thank you,
I treat my colleagues well.
Indeed. And he'll just start munching on his protein block.
It's better than average.
And it's better than nothing.
I think Fortis has managed to interpret better than nothing as like, oh, this is great, thank you, in the
versus the baseline. Yeah.
In terms of how is Harold the kind of person when you mean this is great, you go, this is fine?
Yes. Oh yeah. His baseline is a non-response. So any response is probably distinct appreciation.
Nothing, and two better than nothing. Fortis turns to go, yeah, you're welcome. I should go take the others back to Waverly before they get cold. Let us send somebody if you need anything.
No, I'll join you. I suppose we should keep that one out of trouble.
Okay, cool. I'll be by the door when you're ready, when you've done with the silkworms. And moves out of line to let you finish. Moves out of line of sight to let you finish up.
So he shall, and he'll garb up. He's now more tweed than man.
As Fortis steps out of the room, and you kind of catch the last of their silhouette before the makeshift door kind of closes. You feel the familiar buzz in your mind as you hear, do you think that one will ever make a mistake?
Oh,
at least twice a day. But he's got potential, I suppose.
Potential is good. Most certainly. There was a lot of potential back in the day. But
indeed.
I'm just wondering how much more Fortis can learn from us.
I don't know that there's a limit for anyone given infinite time.
You don't think there's a cap on potential, so to speak?
No. With enough time and effort, one can accomplish anything.
I thought that with finite time meant finite limits. Or at least that is the limited understanding that I had.
Yes, we do all have a shelf life, I suppose, but one can accomplish a great deal with enough dedication. We must make sacrifices to do it, but it can be done.
Sacrifices. I will ponder this information. Thank you. With that, you feel the buzz intensify for just a moment. And we're going to make a roll.
Ooh, I like this.
So, the way that rolls work in Synthesis is you're going to be rolling a 2d6, and your 2d6 basically represents a thesis and an antithesis. So, the idea that you have now pushed onto the AI and what the AI believes is the correct idea. And we are aiming for a synthesis. So we're aiming for the AI to learn the information that you have just presented that was opposing to its own and create a perfect mixture of the two and a perfect understanding. And depending on how different the two dice are from each other, will change how the roll looks. So you're not looking for the highest number, you're looking for both dice to match.
Okay.
Or as close as you can as possible. So yeah, go ahead and roll those 2d6 for me.
I have a 4 and a 5.
A 4 out of 5 is good. All right. So it's not a perfect synthesis. It's an imperfect synthesis. So that is still a success. That is good. So the AI has taken something away from what you have just said. Related to the conversation that just happened, you get to choose a one-word anchor, a one-word trait to apply to the AI. And the AI now takes that character trait and will have it for the rest of the game.
Ooh, so many choices, an infinite world of possibility.
Just have to be related to the conversation.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I think the one word it's going to take is learning.
Okay. All right. So it strives to take in even more information, and this idea of learning is not finite. There's an infinite possibility to it. All right, I like that. So now that trait has been locked in, with that roll resolution, the AI will now have that for the end of time, or until another player adds a countermanding trait. So, as the buzz intensifies for a moment, it then swiftly, and as it usually does, leaves your purview, and you can go ahead and rejoin with Fortis outside. Are you two beelining straight to Waverly, or are you making any stops? Anything?
I think it's direct, since we've got hot food in tow.
Yeah, I would assume that too. Lead the way, young man. I shall follow.
Yes, the foreman did let me know where Waverly had wandered off to. And that they're working in this quadrant of the grounds outside of base as of late. Trudge.
Mm-hmm. And considering the fact that paper is incredibly difficult to maintain in cold environments, a lot of these like maps and things that you're using are probably like stitched straight into leather rather than like, you know, strong, robust, like not pretty, just gets the job done, and built to last. So there's probably a lot of these like tough pieces of fabric that are used instead of paper. And pens probably aren't really a thing anymore. It's probably more just using needles and thread and things and embossing. But yeah,
That makes me think of A Tale of Two Cities, where they were writing code in knitting.
Yeah, I was going to say, any kind of weaving computers probably have like a loom attached to that file data.
And instead of punch cards, it's rolls of knitted fabric.
Love it. Yeah, awesome. So you begin making your way over, and Waverly, this, as I say, it does take a pretty significant amount of time, but poetically, just as the final kind of chisel hits and you manage to crack open enough of a space, the water is freezing cold, but you can at least see more now. You kind of brush away some of the dirt that's kind of accumulated at the bottom of this lake here and move it away. You see a door, just this big metal door, pretty much like just a full like 90 degrees, keypad like here, door here. It just opens up. And you clear enough away to be able to see it's definitely relatively thick metal, relatively robust, built to last. And judging by the type of metal, you're not exactly an expert, but you do know an expert when it comes to alchemical properties. But from what you've gathered from Fortis's discussions, this might be old world material. It's about then that you hear shuffling footsteps in the snow and the tundra behind you, the snapping of pine and the like.
Waverly.
I will. Huh? I turn and look at you, and my face is beaming.
Oh,
Fortis, Harold. Oh, what are you two doing out here?
you seem to be in a good
What?
mood. I brought you lunch.
What
You
have
don't
you
have a
found?
lunchbox with you. I knew it.
What have you found this time?
I will take the food after I like shove my utensils back in my bag, and I'll grab. Oh yeah, blocks. I love these, and just start nibbling on them. Oh, that's good.
They are good, aren't they? Fortis beams at Dr. Harold.
I found, and I'll like bound over to the location that I was digging, and I will take my free hand and just gesture broadly at the ground. Old world technology. Just right under the ice.
Old world technology.
Right here.
So, there is a kind of like surprise, and then there's like a protocol kind of taught protocol kicks in. Okay, before we panic, who has disinfectant on them? We need the antibacterial disinfectant if we're going to be touching anything old world.
I would imagine Harold keeps a small spray bottle with him at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
Spray Waverly's hands.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'll hold my hands out.
There is a visible sigh of relief from Fortis. Okay.
Then Harold is going to walk over and lean to examine what we see.
Okay. As the two of you see this, as Waverly kind of points it out, due to your experiences, you both notice different things first. Dr. McKinnon, for yourself, you immediately recognize the kind of keypad here at the front door.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively simple. Just a kind of like a card swipe mixed with a quick button input. The thing that you noticed interestingly is that stage 1 is complete. Looks like a card was swiped through here at some point, but whatever the number was meant to be was not put in. But you've been around your fair share of laboratories. You've forgotten the code to certain rooms and managed to get in anyway, judging by the wear across the numbers. You're experienced. You could crack this if you wanted to, but then just a couple of guesses.
Yeah, I will attempt. Is there anything I need to do to be able to do that?
No. You
Okay.
can go ahead and lean on in and just kind of Judging by the worn keypad,
I'm gonna give it a little spritz first, and then I'm gonna, yeah.
few tippy taps. As you're doing that, Fortis, first thing you notice with your alchemical knowledge, this is some kind of tungsten alloy. Tungsten being one of, if not the strongest metal that has ever existed. This thing is built to be fortified. You're seeing like mixtures of tungsten and titanium and steel. A lot of these kinds of alloys, tungsten especially, were the first thing that the bacteria went for.
Oh.
Tungsten is used in paints. So paints covered plastic. It was a very quick adaptation to tungsten and tungsten alloys. So seeing this metal and recognizing it, you've only seen a few instances of tungsten existing at all in your time, let alone this much. This is a large door. A full, like, not quite a double door, but like a large single door that would go through.
Yeah.
And judging by the fact that it is still intact, probably means that the water here has not been infected with the bacteria.
This is old. This hasn't even touched bacteria. This isn't even, like, if this was any newer, it would have holes in it. But this is pristine.
Well, I suppose that means for now it is safe.
Yes, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad, but I'm trying to, and is making this kind of like gesture and a kind of like, okay, keep your shit together, Fortis, please. What is in there is going to be plastic untouched by the bacteria. Stuff I have never even seen before. There could be rubber ducks in there. There could be tiny cars with no engine that children pretend to drive around in there. There could be a hamburger in there.
Well, those were only partly plastic to my early memory. Mostly it was the buns.
I mean...
And the cheese. The cheese was definitely plastic. We ate that. Can you imagine just eating plastic?
No wonder there were microplastics inside people. Looking up to one side. Okay, so... Holy shit, okay. So you think you could get the door open?
Yes. Give me a moment and we will be in.
Here while you go and do that so I don't freak out. Also, I'm going to close the window because apparently noisy cars outside. But yeah, Fortis leaves the scene to stop freaking out for a moment.
Yes. Waverly, do you remember the original name for tungsten on the periodic table?
T?
No, it's W for Wolfram.
Right. I gotta study more.
How are you doing over there? It is cold and you've been out for some time.
I was so focused and hard at work here. I think I sweat a little bit. I'm starting to get a little chilly.
Perhaps next time you should better prepare for the cold.
Well, in my defense, I wasn't planning on chiseling something out of the ice like this.
In this age, we must be prepared for all eventualities.
Right.
Fortis, have you recovered?
Yes, sorry. I was having a moment. So what's next?
suppose we enter.
It's as if, by magic, as soon as that's said, you hear a very muffled underneath the water beep, 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 and the door very slowly opens as you watch in real time the lake drain through the door and the water kind of collapse down this what seems to be a shaft. You're not entirely sure as the water is kind of covering most of the area here. But as the water kind of begins to drain and those little parts of the lake bed begin to be shown now, you're seeing more metal. And specifically for you, Fortis, you're now kind of realizing what this seems to be. You identified kind of like a tungsten alloy. You're realizing there's actually two metals that are layered here. There's a layer of this tungsten alloy, and then there's a layer of what seems to be titanium alloy. So this mixture of like strong in terms of tensile strength and strong in terms of impact strength. You're like, this could be some kind of bunker, almost some kind of protective shelter of sorts that was created.
And we just filled it full of water. Shit. No, it's nobody's. That's not blaming of anybody. It's just, peers down. Is there like a ladder?
There is indeed a ladder, and you hear a slight, shocking of like, wait, is that? No, that's electricity. You see a flicker down at the end of the shaft, and suddenly this bright, almost like clinical white light switches on. You can see at the very bottom of the ladder is a corridor that starts. And interestingly enough, you don't see any of the water at the ground. It's not there. It's just shiny metal floor.
Oh, it drained. Oh, well. Fascinating. Have either of you ever seen light bulbs like this?
No. These would be concentrating. Legend? Light bulb fluorescent.
Yes, these do look like fluorescent bulbs. Not a great deal of plastic in them, but
They hurt
the
my
wires
eyes to look at. Ow.
Yes, they vibrate brightly.
Okay. We should go get you a second set of less water and ice sodden clothes, Waverly. And then we go down into history.
I suppose there may be a great many things to bring back.
Yes.
Perhaps we can recover lost technology or information.
And, Fortis looks to Waverly and sees how they're handling this information.
There is visible excitement, but also it's contained. Waverly looks like they're ready to spring.
And as a result, Fortis is like, okay, so I am matching the mood of the room here. Cool. But I don't think the distance between is necessarily super long, but specifically goes back and comes back with an alternate change of clothes for Waverly, in addition to, I think, these really elaborate woven strap, backpacks that I think if a person of the modern era, of the present era, saw them, would describe them as techwear but it's definitely not made of the kind of materials that techwear is made from, but it has that kind of cut and styling to them. All the buckles are made of wood and shit. It's cool.
Weaver Punk, we're making it happen.
But yes, now that we're properly strapped to go dungeoneering, I guess.
All right. Portis, as you have a moment here and you're getting yourself prepared, you're getting everyone else prepared and making sure that you're reading the room correctly and all of this kind of thing, a familiar consciousness pops up into your mind. Just, I'm glad you seem so excited. Really, really glad. You seem just thrilled about this entire situation.
Oh, hey DD, how's it going? Having nicknamed this AI Daydream in the past because of how it kind of, wanders into your thoughts while you're doing other things, and it has slowly been shortened to DD. Whether it responds to that or not is up to the AI.
I'm glad you seem entirely just. It's good to see you pleased about the situation.
Oh, you would actually know about all this, right? This is of your era.
I recognize the beginning of this structure, I guess you could say. Definitely from my time, yes. Old world. We used to have control bunkers, I think, is what they were designated as, if I'm recalling my information correctly. Small areas where people would be able to do research on anything, really, whether that be back when plants were easily grown, areas to study agriculture and the way that it affects perhaps increasing crop yield, or perhaps how plants would grow in 0G or in extreme
Indeed,
territories and
you're
the
making my
like.
heart race.
Well, I recall information that curious individuals enjoy learning experiences.
I just don't get my hopes up, okay? I've never seen anything like this before, and if this is something that we can use, that would be huge, revolutionary, at least for us. Trying to get it overseas makes it exposed to the bacteria, so I don't know if we would be able to do that, but if we could actually make a greenhouse, goodness.
I believe the correct old world nomenclature would be, don't threaten me with a good time.
Noted.
No, there's a little bit of warmth kind of fills your mind. And we shall see what we are able to achieve with whatever is down here, but you are still human, so care is perhaps advised.
Yeah. Yes. Hence the backpack, the knee pads, the climbing gear. I've never had to use climbing gear, but it was part of the pack. I feel excited to be an explorer, I guess. Which am I allowed to suggest that is a word to imprint from this conversation?
Yeah, you can definitely go ahead and
I would
that's
like to
the joy of
roll
things.
to implement the word explorer.
Okay,
onto
yeah,
DD.
Absolutely. Go ahead and roll those 2d6.
2d6.
And this is exactly how this system is meant to be. The AI can choose to say, like, oh, that was an impressionable conversation. Let's go ahead and roll and see how much I hold on to it.
We got the double ones.
Ooh,
Let's go.
gee whiz.
Hey, in synthesis, that is a complete success because both numbers match. So, yeah. So when there is no difference between the two die, that is a perfect synthesis. So your thesis and antithesis have created a perfect synthesis. So whatever you wish to imprint, you may, and the AI is allowed to actually be involved in that. So when it's an imperfect synthesis, whatever the player is trying to imprint gets imprinted, and that's that. The AI doesn't get a choice in the matter. A perfect synthesis, however, means that both parties can develop that idea and angle that trait to something that is fantastic for both parties and gets this across. But in this case, Explorer is perfect.
Well,
and
actually,
definitely,
I think because this is such a moment of like joy, there is a whimsy that I think augments the word. How do you feel about Dungeoneer?
yeah, Dungeoneer
Like
is,
we're excited to go on an adventure, like the old stories.
yeah, it adds
know?
that little bit of like almost fantastical element to it. I like that a lot.
Pushing
yeah,
to
we'll
make
go
the
with-
AI just slightly more kind of like jolly and gung-ho about this venture.
All right, awesome. So we have learning and we have
Dungeoneer.
Dungeoneer. And those are the two traits that have now been solidified into the AI. And there's again that little bit of warmth, and that static intensifies for a moment. That's kind of your signifier that the AI is thinking. It may have perhaps learned something, and you know that this is going to be a regular thing, judging by what little you do know of the project that you had joined. And then that consciousness slips away and vanishes just as quickly as it appeared.
Right. Let's climb down a very long and ominous ladder.
Everyone heading in?
Yes, of course.
Okay. You head on down into the shaft and step down the ladder and hit the bottom. First thing you notice is your eyes take a moment to adjust. Tundra areas are very bright because obviously snow reflects light, but real light, biological light, and artificial light are very different things for the eyes to experience. So it still takes you a moment to kind of hone on in. The first thing you notice is a probably like 10-foot wide corridor that continues down. For the first time in perhaps a very long time, you see two huge sheets of glass on either side. Old world glass, pure glass, that stretch across, and behind the glass you see three on each side, these huge mechanical tanks that are now filled with water, the same water that you had just seen drain in. You can even see some of the small lake critters still floating around the sediment and the bed of the lake, sitting at the very bottom of these tanks. And at the other end of the corridor, you see a big set of double doors and a huge piece of plastic drapery that's been pulled over the doors and just kind of hangs there a little bit. It's loose, just looks like a plastic divider of sorts, but this is a huge piece of plastic.
What?
Yeah, I think Harold is going to see the plastic and just silently move up and touch it.
You touch
My
it,
God. Yes.
feels incredibly artificial.
My God. It has been so long. Do you know what this is, you two?
Some sort of synthetic, but goes over also touches the kind of like plastic dividing curtain. It doesn't
It
feel
is.
real.
It is plastic. I have not seen this since I was very young.
I think Fortis kind of puts like an arm around Dr. Harold. You're right.
Yes, of course. It's just... There was a time when we relied on this for everything. Our entire world collapsed because it failed us. It's incredible to see it here.
There's a glance towards Waverley.
Just running a hand down the plastic. It's a lot lighter than I thought it would be.
Right? Just expecting
And
it to
it-
feel like stone or something.
And it has a smoothness, something we don't see so much with the fabrics we make now. What's underneath?
I will peel it back.
Peel it away, and there is indeed a set of double doors, metallic in composition, no windows, so just kind of two walls of metal, as it were, but they're push doors, no lock or keypad on this, and you can see like one of them is slightly ajar, just a little, and there is a smell that kind of wafts through of... You don't really know, Waverly. You don't know what this smell is, but it's pleasant, you think. Seems nice enough.
Hmm.
Harold.
Airborne chemicals are a pretty big deal. We have masks in the pack though, and there's kind of like there's such a limit to what you can do with like fibers in terms of air filtration. But
Do I recognize the smell?
A long, long, long time ago, or it feels that way at least, you recognize this smell immediately. The first thing that comes to mind is peeling away a beautiful plastic wrapper and seeing a incredible sweet concoction of cocoa and this specifically. For the first time in years, you smell mint.
Mint? That is... He's gonna move in now.
oh,
What?
I mean, like the herb, we weren't able to grow that where we lived, but
He's just proceeding in.
All right. Harold, as you step in first, what you see baffles you at first. You knew that, humanity's been trying to survive, humanity's been trying to evolve. There were probably places around that were experimenting and growing and blah, 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 blah. What you did not expect to find down here, however, is a plethora of, one, to the left, what seems to be many, 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 many growing stations. You see mint, you see cherry, you see nuts, you see raisins, like both like grape plants, like small bushes, and like already squished raisins that have been like pre-prepared and sweetened a little and kind of kept in these small glass jars. And towards the back on the right, you see these huge machines crushing down these beans, and this liquid like traveling through multiple sections of this machinery. And the smell, it smells this beautiful mixture of bitter and sweet as you step inside. It's almost sickly, especially after how long it's been since you have experienced chocolate before. There is a huge chocolatiers completely around you.
It's like walking into Willy Wonka's factory. He's just stunned, just in the middle of this space, just looking at the cacophony of things going on, rich with the smells of all of these components for food just wafting through the air. And he's just gonna stare, mouth agape.
Harold, what is it? I mean, I can see it, but what is it?
It's a place for producing food. A myriad of ingredients have been sustained for decades. For candy.
Candy. I don't. Candy?
There was a time when we had more than your bug blocks. There was a time where we had different kinds of food with different palate appeal, rich, meaty flavors, vegetal flavors, and sometimes as a treat we'd have candy. And in particular here we have chocolate, a rich sweetness, incomparable.
So you're telling me that for the last year, we have been living on top of the largest dessert.
The largest dessert? Yes, a self-sustaining dessert.
Fortis
What we have found is magic.
covers his mouth and heads back into the kind of like hallway past the doors, and you can hear him screaming and say, "Fuck yeah! Oh my god, shit! Yeah." That's great.
Yeah, Harold is gonna walk over and grab a piece of chocolate. And he's going to taste it. My god. The last time I tasted this, I was 7 years old. And he's going to begin to weep.
And this is like high quality, like milky, like Swiss style chocolate. This is like super smooth in your mouth. It's just.
It's beautiful. Tears.
I think there's a level of immediate empathy that goes on, and Fortis is now crying as well.
Hey, you don't have to be sad about the chocolate.
It's not sadness. This is joy. Come, taste the chocolate. It is incredible.
Don't you think we should bring some up for everyone else?
We will bring all of this up. The technology, untouched by the microbe. We can
hold
bring
on.
back.
If we move it, we might break it. We can bring some chocolate up. We can't. We probably shouldn't bring a machine up.
Yes,
Just in
but we
case.
can clone the technology and bring it up, and take seeds from these fruits and nuts.
Waverly, you feel that buzz pop back into your head again as you hear Oh, you really stumbled onto something amazing this time. Look at all of this.
Yeah, I know. Can't believe it.
It's just wild. The machines and the look. There's more doors as well. There's more places in here. This isn't it. There's more space. And there's. Can you imagine everything that we could do with this?
The two of you would see me look to the door, like other doors, and my eyes would just like widen.
And there's 3 doors, kind of like one on the left, one on the right, one ahead of you. The one ahead of you is like past the machines. The one on the left is like through this miniature like hyperponics bay almost. And seems to like continue off that way. The right-hand door appears to be the only one that is locked with another one of those keypads. But the door itself has been left like on latch, so it's not actually locked. It should probably be, but it's not. Yeah, this voice kind of continues to be a little excited and just. And this was because of you. This was because you found it. This is amazing.
Well, I just found it. We wouldn't have been able to get in if we didn't get help from everyone else. So it's like a team effort, but can you even imagine? There might be. I turn to the other two. Can you imagine what might be behind these other doors? If this is just what we found in the first room, what do you think we're going to find somewhere else?
There is a visible reaction of like trying to think or imagine what could be. I have nothing. I can't think of what would be behind the other doors. I'm sorry.
Exactly. It'll be things we've never seen before. Well, I mean, that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, we may be able to take some of this technology to improve the lives of everyone in the city.
Oh my god.
Exactly.
All right.
Let us take a peek.
Which door do you want? Left, middle, or right? Doctor, which one do you want?
Either one. Possibilities lie behind them both.
No. But I want this. There are 3 doors, and the Fortis is very giddy, and there are 3 of us.
How about the one that's not locked?
No. It's a jar. It's a jar. They've clearly not locked it properly. We can just scoot. So which door? Which door? Pick a door.
He's just gonna walk over to the one that's ajar. The path of least resistance.
Sure.
Push.
Waverly.
Okay.
Pick a door.
Go to the one on the north side.
And then, like, Fortis gets the one in the middle. Right, on 3, and Dr. Harold has already opened one. Fortis has not noticed.
And open on 3.
And what do we find behind doors number 1, 2, and 3?
1, 2, 3. The doors burst open. Waverly, you went to the left, right?
Sure.
I should have said left correct, and then that way it wouldn't have been less confusing. Yes. So center, right? Yeah. Yes, you would have gone through the small little like hydroponics bay. You realize the stuff outside, those seem to just be tests. They seem to just be like test samples. As this door swings open, you are hit with a barrage of different smells, of different textures of smells, almost like this mixture of that mint that you smelled before, the brightness, the sweetness of fruits and such. You open this up to a huge bay of various different kinds of plants and multiple machines and terminals kind of scattered throughout the room. Old world computers and just a mixture of different some of the ones you've already seen before, like fruits and nuts and things, and some kinds of plants and fruits that you don't recognize. You've never seen them before, and you've never like read about them or anything. They seem strange. You're learned enough though to realize like some of these more odd plants appear to have traits of multiple others that you see in this room. No other doors here, but you do see a pipe leading from your angle towards the left here. It looks like the lake water is actually being filtered out and is being used to hydrate all of the plants here, and then being rotated and sent back through into those containers.
I'm running around just getting eyefuls of everything as closely as I can before I will run back out to see what everyone else found.
Okay. Fortis, as the door for you opens up, you see a few more of these machines kind of scattered around the outskirts of the room here. And in the center, you see this massive table with all kinds of implements on it, with these huge sheets of what appear to be blue paper strewn across the table itself. Looking a little closer, you can see that these machines are in various states of construction and deconstruction. There are racks of tools across the wall. There are a few like notebooks kind of like strewn here, there, and everywhere. This appears to be the construction room, the repair room. And stepping forwards and kind of taking a closer look at the table, it appears to be like workmen's blueprints. Some of them blank, but some of them filled out and showing some of these machines that you see.
Any of them dated?
Weirdly enough, no. There doesn't appear to be names. There doesn't appear to be dates. Any identifiable, like, markers. Like, there's no project name or anything. It's just kind of very clearly been drawn out here. But yeah, this whole room of just machinery and materials, essentially. And, again, all old world.
Fortis looks at this and is like, I don't... It seems to be that there is no... Or there's the impression that there is no, like, text, right? It might have numbers, but...
Exactly.
Wait, it's not in any language, even if it's not one I don't know, then maybe it's people from multiple places working here? As in first instance, Fortis finds like one of the notebooks and then puts it in the not techwear backpack.
All right. Fantastic. And the good doctor, as you open up your door here, a little earlier than everyone else, a few extra lights seem to pop up to fill out this room. It has been a very, very, very long time since you have seen this high tech of a research facility in your life. Old world, this would have been like the secret government shit that you see in books and movies. There is machines all across the place. Again, they all seem to be functional and running. There are multiple terminals online. There are multiple small kind of refrigerators and things holding samples of plants and the like. You see an astounding amount of chocolate in this room. In various stages of being like dissected and tested on and researched and throughout this whole room. You've never quite seen a confectionery put through quite so much hassle, but
Or
yeah, this
scientific
is-
rigor.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is together and here and working.
There's so much to learn here. Is there any way to take, like, are there notebooks around, like lab notebooks, describing what they were doing?
Yeah, you can go ahead and peek at some of the books. You end up noticing the same thing that Fortis notices in the other room. There's no dates or names. There's no like researchers or keeping track. It just seems like there's a page break in between like each day's research things. What's interesting as well is that multiple sections in each book are in different languages. So it's not like one book is in one language and one book is in another. It looks like almost where there's a page break, someone else has come. There's different handwriting, a different language, and it kind of continues all the way throughout. What you do pick up, just with a quick like cursory glance, though, is that chocolate and cocoa and sugar in general is one of the things that the bacteria didn't really seem to be able to adapt to very well. So a huge amount of money and time and resources was put into exploring the multitude of uses for materials that the bacteria couldn't digest. And one of the researchers even comments that it's incredibly strange that we're doing this with something as, casual and enjoyable as a sweet treat like chocolate. But throughout history, cocoa and chocolate has had medicinal uses and medicinal purposes. So why not? It's as good a place to start as any.
Then I suppose he's going to want to dig deeper to figure out if they had identified any specific compounds in cacao that could be attributed to either reducing the speed of the microbe or killing it.
Again, you only have enough time for kind of like a cursory glance, but...
Then I'm going to take the notes.
Okay. What you do pick up is it seems that the specific kind of like sugar and fat that seems to be present was difficult enough to digest that using it as like a balm could prevent short-term infection, or at least slow it down to a point where it could be disinfected and treated. A very strange application, like rubbing an infected area with chocolate, but it seemed to do the trick in preliminary tests. And there were a few other repelling factors that they seemed to be exploring, and eventually they were looking to essentially make a new type of disinfectant using sugar. But it doesn't look like, judging by just your general knowledge, as a learned individual, it doesn't look like this project was going on for too long, but there were a lot of people working here.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I suppose Harold is going to have to pull himself from the room to check in on the others. Have you found anything of use, Waverly?
I found a room like this, except it's like 10 times bigger. And there's different types of plants and fruit and combinations of them. It's amazing.
Yes, they were on the verge, I think, of something very critical to fighting the microbe. Lots and lots of natural products chemistry.
Okay. I managed to go and find a ton of blueprints. They're all designed so they can be followed even if you don't speak a specific language, so anyone on the station can use these.
Wonderful. Let us for now return to our laboratory to
Yes.
oversee these data and notify our leaders of our findings.
But before we go, I didn't get to because I was too caught up. But I have to try a piece of chocolate, candy, and like puts a piece in his mouth, and you know the expression of like a young kid who is eating something that they've not eaten before, and their face just goes through a whole bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
That tasted really strange.
Yes, it's very sweet.
Ah. He goes kind of like out of the. I'm gonna go take this upstairs. The notebooks that I found. Excuse.
Do you need a moment?
I'm fine.
I have heard of the powerful eroticism of chocolate before, but this
I'm
is quite a
fine.
bit.
And he makes his way kind of like upstairs, and I think by the point that you follow, and there is like a notable kind of like he clearly spat the chocolate back out again on like in the snow. It seems that he wasn't a fan of the taste at all. So excited, and then no, it was gross. Didn't like it.
Not having it.
For the rest of us.
Harold, as you are kind of thumbing through the pages still, a little something kind of slips into your hand. You see this little kind of white glossy square kind of slip into your hand, and it takes a moment for you to recognize it, but you do. This was old technology, even when you were young. But some people still used it as physical reminders. Looks like a photograph, a Polaroid photograph. You see a very pretty and wholesome sight before you. In front of the main kind of like chocolatier section here, you see a collection of probably about 35-ish people. All of different cultures, different descendancies, different backgrounds, very clearly. All huddled together, smiling away, in what seems to be like a work event where everyone is in their pajamas. There's all kinds of like some individuals are just kind of wearing the stereotypical like, you know, like crosshatch like shirt and trouser pajama combo. There's a few individuals that are very clearly in like these elaborate fluffy onesies, and you know, it just kind of spreads across, and they all seem to be holding cups of what you would probably assume, judging by the cream and the marshmallows that seem to be on top, like these cups of hot chocolate. And they're all keeping them close, and none of them are really looking at the camera. They all seem to be in either discussion or smiling with each other, and you know, just talking and hanging out and having a wonderful time. And the amount of just joy that this picture radiates reminds you that you're aiming for something. It's still there. It's still there in humanity. It's just gonna take a bit longer to get back to this point.
And a small smile creeps onto his face before he just puts it back into the book and turns the page to look at the upcoming data.
Mm.
The book seems to end in a language that you understand. The last page that you see just after this. It just kind of goes on about new strides and the general morale and atmosphere and how things seem to be still looking up. It's simply signed off with everything will be all right someday. We just have to work to get it there. We keep moving forward. It's underlined once. There's a little heart underneath the exclamation mark. There is more to discover, more to develop, and more to explore. But for now, that was a little glimpse into the lives of these characters that we created together. And that pretty much wraps up our little taste of synthesis.
Excellent. Oh my god.
That was so much fun.
Oh my god.
I
Amazing.
love that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Content.
No, that was a fantastic fucking story that we just told. That was so, yeah. I'm glad it was as cozy as we as we had aimed for. I really enjoyed that. That was delightful. Okay, shall we go into a bit of comments and kudos and debrief? Because you know, at the end of all the streams that we do, like to have a moment to kind of go around the table and highlight all the rad things that other players did.
Heck yeah. I'm just gonna jump in and start us off. I mean, mine are kind of blanket comments, just due to, you know, the position I was in. I love how y'all just kind of grabbed things and ran with it. Like, I loved the characters, I loved the connection between, I loved the instant kind of, you all had a fantastic spin at realism. The characters felt like they could have existed in this world, and I like that a lot. Like the slightly kind of like matter-of-factly, you know, like, oh, this is this and this is this of Dr. Harold there, and that kind of reflection of an older person in a situation like this. A lot of these stories kind of focus around the next generation, so to have the older figure kind of looking back at how things were was a fantastic stroke of genius. I loved the kind of entrepreneurialism, almost, this kind of developing idea behind Waverly, and this like, we can do more, like trying to not in like in like a really positive way, like just, yes, we can keep going with this. Look at the amount of everything that is before us, and of course Fortis and their I love Fortis and the intelligence, but I also really liked the kid-like giddiness that kind of came along with it. And I mean that in the best way.
Oh no, absolutely.
It was a really cool little, especially after like, what, an hour and a half of playing together, after just setting up this world. Like, yeah, I'm so pleased that y'all ran with it and made something as fantastic as that.
No, I really liked Ren having set their kind of like character backstory and archetype. You kind of really felt that immediately in the decisions that they took for their character. It was consistent throughout, even in small bits and pieces. The kind of like, hey, you discovered this, and immediately self-deprecating. It's like, well, we all did this. I didn't find anything. We did this as a team. It wasn't just me. It's like, oh, that is astoundingly consistent and keeping to character. I loved how you managed to keep all that in your head. I definitely have the character that I write at Chargen versus the character I settle into tend to be wildly fucking different. So I admire people who can manage that kind of consistency.
Thank you.
I really appreciated the like overwhelming ebullience that you gave us, Nathan. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Just like that unyielding optimism is just super fun and refreshing.
No, I wanted to give, because both of you are so practical and ready to survive in this environment, and I am here to help. I might not necessarily have the experience that everybody else does, but I do know that I can kind of make everybody's lives a modicum more comfortable, even if that's just kind of bringing a smile, I guess.
I absolutely enjoyed Juicy how Harold was so you had that guiding hand to the character. It's like, oh, back in my day, this was used for this particular reason, or just like stepping us into your character's history in a way. And I thought that was a really cool touch. And I just absolutely loved the flair you had for, the tears when Harold tastes the chocolate and those memories come flooding back to him. And it was just so good.
Oh fuck, I teared up too, man. That was like, that was really, really good. I was like, oh no. No, I'm crying when they tasted chocolate. Oh no. Oh, that ruled. Ugh. What an astounding way to end off an incredible weekend of storytelling with something so warm and cozy. I know, everybody, I'm going to give y'all snaps for each other. Folks who are in the chat, if you feel like chatting, you don't have to, but please give a digital round of applause for our absolutely stellar fuckers. Gosh. Let's, I guess we go and bring this on home after literally 24 hours of storytelling that we gave y'all. I hope you have all had a fantastic festival. To go back through the list, Juicy, please tell them who you are and where you at.
Yeah, again, I'm Juicy Garland, a Boston area drag queen. Normally I wear wigs. Today I just needed to not after 2 days of wigs and corsets. You can find me at Twitter, on Twitter at Juicy Garland, and on Instagram at juicy.garland. And feel free to say hi, give me a follow. I'm always looking for more opportunities to stream gaming online.
And Ren.
I'm Ren. You can find me everywhere on the internet at Thorny Dryad. You can check out my projects by following me on Twitter, see what I'm up to. And I suppose I just say I'm your friendly neighborhood agender variety streamer and tabletop role-playing game performer. One other project of mine I would like to shout out, you can hear me as a character in a podcast called Roads Uncharted, which is the very first ever Genesis AP podcast. So give that a listen anywhere your favorite places to download podcasts would be.
Marvelous. And last but by absolutely no means least, Ray.
Ray's camera dropped. I don't know if his audio is here.
Yeah, they still connected to the call. Yes. I don't know if... Well, we can wait for Ray to return. Oh, there was I guess we kind of skipped over the idea of kind of talking about the system itself and things like that. I think it worked really, really smoothly. I don't play that many world-building tabletop RPGs, but do enjoy the small little bits and pieces ones I get to try, and I think this builds into the genre really cleanly. And I really like the dice mechanics of getting the numbers to match, because that feels super unusual for 2d6 systems. I quite enjoy the tantalizing nature of that. I wonder if, well, this game's quite freeform, but I wonder if it's thought about in terms of scenes, and then at the end of every scene, we get to have that conversation in the dice roll, so we get to start adding more character tags thick and fast through the session. I think that would be really good to, I guess, encourage the table to think about those ideals. Because when you had that conversation about anything can be achievable with time, if the AI brought that thought to my character, or really to me, I would have been like, well, actually, the human brain stops making new connections after a certain point in a certain age. It's well documented that once you hit about 70, it's impossible to learn a new language fluently because your brain has already settled into neural pathways. So there is technically a time limit. And I was interested in being like, oh, what would that do in terms of like building a counter idea? But otherwise, I think the core system of this is really, really cool.
Yes. I think it's dependent on having someone driving who is really comfortable with the system and also with with pushing cooperative storytelling in a productive way. I think that it needs a good captain, or I think that it's so rules light. I think would be hard to keep up steam if it didn't have the right group of people who were willing and like eager to be engaged with the story and to co-produce it.
No, I get you. Not all games are for all people, but I think that's great.
No, and that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
Like I personally like it, and I love like cooperative storytelling, exactly what we did here. I don't know if there ought to be, or if the intent is to have more built-in mechanics for providing conflict in story, or if a conflict-free story is the intent. But I don't mind a conflict-free story. I felt like this didn't really have conflict, and that was good. But it might help if the intent is to provide narrative conflict, to introduce a mechanic that builds that in as well. And I don't know if that requires like the players to provide tensions between one another. If that would then provide conflict, if that were a requirement, because we didn't really have that kind of conflict.
I guess in an alternate timeline when we were playing this, and we set ourselves as like, oh, it's a climate crisis kind of thing, and there are so few resources left. That even though we've all separately been implanted with the AI and don't know that each of us has been implanted with it, and maybe the AI is trying to test the resolve of humanity in which ideals are the strongest, and then maybe the AI is more specifically trying to pit us against each other and things like that. I guess that depends on the way that you do the world building in the lead up to. But
or if there's a like as a group we would predesignate a goal.
Even though I wasn't here to hear any of what you said, I'm just going to blindly agree.
If one wanted to introduce, so we were talking about like introducing conflict within the narrative, not necessarily conflict in terms of fights, but like just a driving conflict for the narrative might be helpful for groups of people who want to play this, who might not just all automatically have the skill sets necessary to provide story. And I don't know if that means like predesignating a goal together, what everyone is trying to achieve within the world they've fabricated. That may then set up tensions that can drive characters forward if they don't necessarily have the narrative or storytelling skills to do so.
I am so sorry. My internet is just having a time. Hi, hello.
It's all good. You can catch all this discussion on the VOD after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of like a post-game mechanics thoughts, Ren?
I really think that the way this was organized, we had step 1, we had step 2. I thought Ray did an excellent job kind of showcasing how each of those different parts feeds into the others. And I think that's a very, very thorough approach to creating the setting, creating the characters, and how they know and work together or don't. And I think that's important to note too, is the fact that Ray did say, you know, are you friends? Are you enemies? Are you rivals? There was that room for that narrative conflict as well. I think personally, I would love the chance to see, like you mentioned, more AI keywords coming into play and seeing how each scene can develop new thoughts, new programming. And I also would love to see what happens when you get to diametrically opposed ideas being programmed into that AI. How does that resolve? So I think this is a really cool system, and I think it's something that I'm real happy I was able to play with the two of you and with Ray. So
yeah, I really like the idea of adding in that kind of like computer thinking in terms of the number of keywords maybe the AI can hold at once. Is there a first in, first out system kind of thing, where after you take on too many keywords, it pushes out the oldest one? Or there's maybe like different modes of play where you can choose how your AI will process the number of keyword instructions it takes? Because that feels one of the things I always like shooting for when I design tabletop RPGs is what experience do you want the players to feel as in the narrative, and then can you reflect that mechanically? So in the AI player experience, what is one way to feel like an AI is thinking about one of those computer logic processes and seeing if that can be applied to how the AI behaves as a character or something. Yeah.
I think too, it would be interesting if the computer were more intrusive, where like it spoke to you in bad moments, where like you're in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of something where there's tension or where there are stakes. So then your role can have an impact on sort of the outcome of you responding to that moment as well, right? Because if you have a poor role and the computer misunderstands you, you're also losing focus, and maybe that means that there's a barrier in your way for whatever you're trying to do at that time.
No, I feel that. So many games can kind of work smoothly on a scene occurs at the climax of a scene where the outcome is uncertain, there's a die roll, and then we move on. And you can still apply that to when there is a climax, when things are uncertain, the AI whispers in your ear and you have to have a thought conversation as well as maybe a vocal or a dexterous one. Yeah.
Kind of like Clippy. The old like Microsoft systems.
I love that.
You look like you're having trouble. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a world where in a world where the world building would have taken a darker turn, that's what would have happened. It would have been popping up in difficult moments, and there's a lot more danger. We had two very good die rolls, but one of the things in Synthesis is if your die rolls are too far apart, the AI learns the wrong lesson. And the worst possible example is the AI gets to assign itself a trait, and it does not tell anyone else what it is.
Okay.
So it's this idea of like, it's definitely more of a long form thing, like in terms of stacking up traits essentially, and different die rolls, then creating different outcomes and things like that. Yeah, we had an imperfect, a perfect, so it wasn't like
it was pretty smooth sailing. And I think that
was
worked
very,
really well
very
for the
smooth
story we were
sailing.
telling anyway, so that's another problem.
Yeah, it was nice and cozy, but yeah, it would be in a different kind of like world building session, it would become more intrusive the further it came along, and then using its traits to test the player's traits is essentially the idea. Like, if your friend gave the AI selfless and then you are acting selfish, then how is the AI going to react to that, and the like. Yeah,
Definitely. That definitely feels, because you raise a good point actually. We also assigned ourselves keywords at start. And I wonder if there is a circumstance. It's not one that has to happen particularly often. It might even be a bit of an end game move, like a once per session if things are drastic. But an AI can take one of their keywords and replace one of your keywords with that keyword instead. being kind of like, I think you should be acting this way. You know, and that can be for the best. That could be replacing heartache with comfort. But it could also be,
yeah.
Since we're biologically connected, it feels that that threat, that this connection can go both ways. If it happens to reach that as a circumstance, feels like a tantalizing edge case rule that you find when you look through the rules and go like, oh, the game could do this. Well,
Yeah.
we'll just kind of keep that in our heads for later if that resolves in the story. But this just means that this needs to be run again, either on your own channels. I do a lot of cyberpunk stuff just off air, and I do wonder whether having a scatter of that test of using synthesis in pre-existing mini campaign or whatever might be a tantalizing prospect. But with that, we'll leave you all on that notion. I think told many stories over this weekend. You've all been absolutely stellar. I am so blessed to have so many enthusiastic people be willing to tell such interesting and genuinely challenging stories with us. And with that, I leave you to the rest, what little remains of your weekend. I have been your androgynous android game show host from the future, Nathan Blades. This has been the Neoncaster Twitch channel, and we will see you all anon. I have no idea when I'm next streaming. I may well take next week off. We'll see. Until then, everybody, peace out. Peace, y'all. Peace.